I haven't finished any new correspondence games this week. I got a new batch in progress.
All right, hopefully the opponents are a little stronger than the last batch.
Well, I'm getting up there. With the current batch, I hope to win at least one of my challenge up games, which is going to bring me up into the 200s. So that's getting up there. We'll see. I see a lot of the same names kind of hanging around me.
So that means they're rising with you.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Okay. All right. So
I watched your video about Botvinnik-Capablanca.
Right, one of the world's most famous games.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
It was interesting that the move that Botvinnik heavily criticized and that I'm not too happy with either, Stockfish actually said, yeah, it's close to the best move.
Yeah, that was interesting. The famous C4, I think that was.
Right, taking the pressure off the center. And, you know, I'm always telling my students not to do that. And in most of the positions where I tell them not to do it, they shouldn't. But this position, you know, every position is a little different. In this particular position, the Stockfish says Capablanca's move wasn't as bad as Botvinnik thought, or not even nearly as bad. But his plan after that was not the best plan, and the plan played right into Botvinnik's hands, allowing him to play a brilliant game.
Right. So that led me to think of the question. Now, when do you want to preserve and dissolve the tension in the center? What are the signs?
Well, when you say dissolve the tension,
well, I mean, push C4.
Playing C4 is different than you could dissolve the tension just by capturing the pawn.
I see.
The tension is kept when the two pawns can keep capturing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Once you capture or push, then that dissolves the tension. So the question is more like closing the position. So are you familiar with the line in the advanced French where you do that?
I don't know which line. I'm not sure.
Okay,
but since I play the French, from the white side or the?
It's well, you do it from the black side, but.
Okay.
All right. So can you see the board?
Yes.
Okay. So E4, E6, D4, D5, E5 advanced variation. And I tell my students the same thing. The advanced variation is perfectly good if you know it really well. If you don't know it, it's really hard to play for white because the obvious moves lead you to a bad position. So you have to kind of know the lines. And any opening that's like that, you can't just wing it. All right. So C5, the required break move. C3 to keep the tension. Knight C3, Knight F6. And now black has two main lines, Bishop D7 and Queen D6. So let's look at Queen D6. All right, so in the old days, there were three moves here. The main move was Bishop E2. The gambit line was Bishop D3, where you give him the D pawn. That's called the Milner-Berry gambit. And then there was the A3 line, which seems a little strange. But the idea of the A3 line is to play B4 and hit this pawn twice with a pawn and force black to do something on the queen side. So Bishop E2 was always the most popular. And computers have kind of changed everything here, because if we look at the top three moves for white, right now those are the top three moves. But you could see that the Bishop D3 sacrifice line is, and now it's not even in the top three. It basically promises white no advantage at all. So the other two famous moves, Bishop E2 and A3, well, they were 1-2 for the moment, and now right now they're back to 1-2 again. But they are the most popular. And A3, which was kind of a distant second to Bishop E2, you can see right now it's hanging in. Right now it's hanging in there at 25 ply. It's almost equal as good with Bishop E2. And that move A3 has become pretty popular. I think if you look at the last 10 years in Grandmaster play, it's probably the most played move. And what's interesting is after you play A3, because of the threat of B4, for instance, suppose black plays a normal move here like Bishop D7. Well, then when white plays B4, if black plays the normal way of breaking things up, like C takes D4, C takes D4, A5, then white can play b5. The knight doesn't have any wonderful places to go. If he plays like knight d8, he doesn't have a lot of squares to go from d8. But he has the same problem. If he goes here, you play here, and there's no more break moves on these pawns. And the bishop can't get out, and if the bishop can't get out, then the knight can't get out. And if you play knight here, then pawn here guards it, and there's no way to break it up. So this is a pretty much winning advantage for white already if he does that. But if he doesn't play a5, then white's just laughing at him the whole way on the queen side, because white can finish his development with more space and have good pressure on both sides of the board. So you can see white's ahead by like 0.4 here. So therefore, after a3, black has to do something. Well, what he does is, the most common move here is to play c4, taking the pressure off the center. It's a very, very interesting move. The idea, of course, is you could pop your knight into the b3 square. And even though white has obviously advantage on the space on the king side, black has plenty of space on the queen side, and white can't open the queen side very easily. So black could, likely castle queen side. In fact, if you look at the top 3 lines, castle queen side, castle queen side, castle queen side is in all 3 lines for black. So this line of taking the pressure off the center with c4, which normally you would never do, is actually a main line here. I'll give you another example where someone goes past like that, and that's the Caro-Kann. So suppose someone plays the Colle system, or no, let's not play the Colle system, let's play the Slav. Suppose someone plays the Slav. And let's play the slower Slav, like this. And let's say black plays bishop d6. All right, would white play c5 here?
Well, I guess he could, because he's still got e4.
So the question is that a good plan? Obviously, it's a legal move. That's not my question.
Yeah, well, sure. It's a good plan.
Well, if you've played over lots of annotated master games, the Slav is a very, very popular opening. So you get to these kind of positions a lot. And then you would say, oh, I've played over lots of Grandmaster games. I see this all the time, c5, or I almost rarely see c5. One of those two is going to be true.
Right. Well, that's kind of lacking in my homeworks. So. Right.
See, that's why I tell my students, I can't, what's the right word? I can't
emphasize.
Gestalt. I can't gestalt that information to you. You can only get it by studying. People expect me to be able to teach them in lessons all the things they can learn by going over thousands of annotated master games, and you can't, because when you go over all those games, you get pattern recognition, and I can't teach pattern recognition. Your brain has to see things a lot. Well, the answer is you almost never see people play c5 here.
Okay.
Now, I've given this to the computer, and the computer says it's not ridiculous, but let's look at the top 5 moves here. All right, so right now it's fighting to stay in the top 4. Go to 5. Right now it's not in the top 5, but you almost never see grandmasters play c5 in this position. And you could see that white's advantage playing e4 castles is considerable, and you can see the 5th best move, h3, is only 0, 0, 0. So so c5 is going to be 0, 0, 0 or worse. So, you don't take the pressure off the center this way. It's just not a good idea. Same thing in the Colle system, same thing. Now let's look at the Panov-Botvinnik attack, which is e4, c6, d4, d5, e takes d5, c takes d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6. And now the question is it bad for white to play c5 here? And he's not even attacking the bishop in this case.
Well, I mean, same answer, I'm not sure, but it looks like that's his kind of the only break move that's a breaking opportunity that's on the board for white right now.
So are you saying not a good idea or okay idea?
I guess I'm saying looks like not a good idea to push.
Yeah,
C5.
See here, c5 is a good move.
Okay.
Okay, so there's two differences. First of all, yes, it's true that c4 is hitting a fixed pawn and can open up lines, but in this position you don't need them. Why?
Oh, it's because I've got a semi-open e-file.
Yeah, the board's already open. There's already been pawns traded off. This is not like the French where there's no open lines. Once you have pawns traded off and you start getting open lines, then opening up even more lines becomes diminishing returns. It doesn't mean that it's bad, it just means it's not necessary anymore. For instance, if you play c5, do you have good lines for both your bishops?
Yeah, I did see that it opened up b5 for the bishop.
Do you have places for your rooks to go?
Yeah, they can come to the central files.
You can go to semi-open e file, and you could go. See, the reason why c5 is so different here is in the Slav, if I played c5, what does it do to the pawn structure?
Let's see. Well, it makes it, well, it's closed.
That's true, but how about in terms of the symmetry?
It's symmetric.
It's symmetric in the Slav because there's no pawns off the board. But here, if I play c5, what does that do to the pawn structure?
Oh, well, it gives you a queenside majority.
And that makes all the difference in the world. If you play c5 and you have 3 pawns to the left of the locked d pawns, and the c pawn is past his d pawn, which gives you a majority, then this majority is good for the rest of the game. If in the Slav, when you play c5, you have no majority, and he has a c pawn and he can break with b6 and he can just bring up your pawns and you're not going to create a passed pawn, but here you can. So c5 is a major idea here. Let's say a stockfish. Stockfish. That's the top few moves here. Look at that.
Oh, he really likes it. Yeah.
c5 by far the best move. See, so you want to train your eye to see the difference. Like here, c5 is like, oh, yeah, that might do something. In the Slav, it's like, gee, what does that do besides hit the bishop, which is going to move anyway? And now you took the pressure off the center. So taking off the pressure off the center in the Slav is not a good idea. Here, the center's already been broken up a little bit by the earlier exchange of pawns. So now if you play c5, you're just creating a majority, which is good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does actually make quite a bit of sense.
All right, here's another example of my game with John Davies. All right, so when I played this game, I was rated 1400 and he was 1700. d4, d5, I played knight c3, he played winnower. I played e5, he played c5, I played a3, he took the knight, which is the main line, I took. And now the main line is knight to e7. Second line is queen to c7. He played queen to a5, so I stopped. And I said, he's 1700, I'm only 1400, but I studied this in the book, and that's not a move. The moves are knight e7 and queen c7. I said, all right, well, obviously I have to stop him from taking the c pawn, and I have to stop him from playing c takes d4. So my only two moves that stop both really are queen to d2 and bishop d2. So I have to play one of those. So I thought for a while and I played bishop d2. And now John played c4. All right, is that a good move or a bad move?
Well, let's see. I mean, it looks like it by locking up the board there. You're giving white kind of free rein to arrange his pieces as he likes, and he's got more space there on the king side to mount a king side attack.
Right. So I said to myself, "You're not supposed to be able to do that. That's not good." So I said, "Well, let me play the move that you play in the main line, and let's see what he does. Queen to g4." Okay, so now what black should probably do is weaken his dark squares with g6. That's probably his best move because, he's probably going to have to castle queenside here. And right now my bishop on d2 is tied up guarding the c3 pawn. So I think he should play g6 and hold his nose. The problem is that I think Mr. Davies knew the main line a little bit, which was knight e2, queen here, queen c7, queen takes, rook here, whoops, sorry, rook to g8, queen h7, pawn takes pawn. And now, of course, white can't take back because he loses a rook, so he has to play knight here. And now black plays knight c6, and white plays f4. And black plays d takes c3, and white plays queen d3. This is all the main line of the winnower. So I think Mr. Davies knew some of this. So what he did was he applied it in the position he was in. The problem was that black had saw that queenside play in the main line, and in the line he's playing, he gets no queenside play. So he says, all right, I'll just play knight e7. And I said, you can't do that. Now I'm going to win those two pawns, and you're not going to get any counter. You're not going to get things back in the center like you do in the main line. So I took the pawn. He went there, and I went there. Okay, so he played knight d7. I think here I played h4, basically saying, why don't I go down and get a queen? He played knight there, hitting my queen. I played queen here. He played knight here. I played knight here. He played knight here. And now I made the only move I can with the queen. I played queen here. And he played knight here. Did I miss a move? I guess not. So here I calculated. If I play queen here, he could go trap my queen by playing rook here and then knight here. So I calculated pawn here, knight here. I think I'm down to tempo. Let's see, where did I lose the tempo? Did I play? Maybe I played queen h5. And he played here, and I played here, and he played here. Right, and I played here, and I said, go ahead and take this pawn, because once I trade everything off, I'm going to get a queen. So he decided not to take it. He played knight here, I played pawn here, he played knight here, I played queen here, he played knight here. So I calculated queen here, rook here, pawn here, knight here, pawn takes, knight takes, pawn takes, and now I'm going to get another queen. So I calculated that, and I could not find anything wrong with that. I couldn't see how he could stop me, and I didn't see how he had anything better. But I was afraid that if I miscalculated, I'd be throwing away an easy win because I'm up 2 pawns, and it would violate the principle, you know, when you're winning, keep it simple.
Right.
Which I didn't know that principle at the time, but I kind of understood it. So I chickened out and I played Queen F4, which threatens to play G4, Knight G7, H6, trapping the knight. So like 50 years later, I gave the game to the computer, maybe 40 years later, and the computer said, oh, main line, Queen F6, Rook G7, H6, Knight G8, H takes G7, and black can resign.
Huh.
So the computer said, yeah, Queen F6 wins. Because I'm just threatening to push this pawn in and get a queen, and there's not much he can do to stop it. So I played here, and now he has to stop pawn here, followed by pawn here. So unfortunately, he has to move the knight again. And I play here, and he plays here, and I play here, and he plays here. So now he's made 10 knight moves in a row. You don't see that very often.
Right.
So move 10 through 19 are all knight moves. So now I play knight here, threatening to fork his rook and his king. And he plays here. And now I did something very unfortunate. But before I tell you what I did, what do you think white should play here?
Well, let's see. I'm just looking at knight to f6 check, but that forces king to f8. But now, what are you doing after that? Is there a mate? Queen to h6 check, rook takes h check, bishop takes h check. That that looks like mate. So knight f6 check, king to f8, queen to h6 check. Rook takes h6, bishop takes h6, mate. Did I get that right?
Yes, and so I calculated that a few times because you don't want to sacrifice your queen without calculating it. Unfortunately, at the time, I was reading Alyekin's best games, which had taken place, 50 years before I played this game. And what I didn't realize, Alyekin was always announcing mate in 12 in his games, but, I didn't realize by the time I was playing, nobody did that. So I announced mate, and my opponent, I told my opponent what the mate was, and my opponent resigned, and I didn't get a chance to play it on the board. So, of course, what I should have done is just played queen h6 check here. And then look at my opponent, and his eyes would have grown wide like, oh my goodness, what's going on? But instead, this move was never played on the board.
That's too bad. Well, they play this, and sometimes then they'd resign.
So this is the first game that I ever had published anywhere. I had it published in the state newsletter.
Oh, nice.
Right. So I was very, very excited to get a game published. Okay. So anyway, cool. So this is an example of your question, which is, when is it good to take the pressure off the center? And in this case, the answer is not here.
Yeah, it's black's playing basically down 4 pieces, it seems like.
Right, if we look at black's best 4 moves here, queen a4 is a very common idea here. The idea of queen a4 is to stop white from playing a4, fixing this pawn on a square where you can attack it with a queen and a knight if you need to. So that's a move. The number 2 move is knight c6. The number 3 move is knight e7. The number 4 move is the common knight h6. Those moves all make a lot of sense. c4 takes the pressure off. Stockfish says, my move, queen g4, is practically winning. It says he should play g6 just like I said. And now I should play h6, h4. He should play like h6 to try to block some of these dark square weaknesses. I should play queen g3, overprotecting this pawn so my bishop can move. And white has a pretty big advantage here. Let's play a few more moves. Knight c6. He wants to play h5, allowing g5, but I have a break move against g5, f4. He says I can play it right away, break him up. f6, knight f3. Bishop d7, getting ready to castle queenside because his kingside is becoming on fire. Stockfish says I should now play either a4 or bishop e2. He would castle queenside. He has to do that. Stockfish says I can castle kingside or play a4. a4. He's not sure what he should play. Rook f8 looks logical. Castle kingside, even though my kingside pawns are pushed up. Get the queen back into the action. And it says white's up by 1.1, but the game's not over, clearly. So he should have done something like this with an interesting game. Instead, once he plays knight e7, now my lead grows to 4. So the fact that I won the game from this position, you know, because as I said, he's thinking of the main lines where you sacrifice those 2 pawns, but you get one of them back right away and you open up the center. Here, he's not getting anything.
Yeah.
So I had enough knowledge of the opening to realize what was going on. I said, well, you know, he's giving me those 2 pawns like in the main line, but he's not getting anything for them. So I won the game nicely, but really I'm winning already. Once he plays knight e7 on move 8, he's dead lost. Doesn't take much.
Yeah.
All right, so, you know, so next time you see a Colle system or something, and, you know, you get these moves, and white plays c5 and white plays c3. You know about c4 here, right?
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, you don't want to do that. That's so if we look at the top 3, 4 moves here for black.
Yeah, that's in logical chess move by move, I believe.
Yeah, it's all over the place. So here, castles is number 1. When in doubt, castle. Knight bd7 is there. Knight c6, b6. Those are all logical moves. c4, taking the pressure off the center. Kind of a beginner mistake here. Yeah. And notice, unlike the Panov-Botvinnik attack, this does not create a pawn majority on the queen side.
Oh, right.
Right, that's a big difference. You know, in the Panov-Botvinnik attack, you know, you already have this exchange of pawns basically opening up the position. You know, this is a pretty open center here. There's not a lot of pawns blocking it as like in a normal center where there's, you know, you don't trade off the 2 center pawns. And now when you play here and he plays here and guys bring out some knights, then playing here. In fact, I think you can even play there on the previous move. Can you play there now? Yep. Stockfish says you can, although it thinks knight c3 might be more accurate. He's even saying you can play c takes d5 and isolate your own d-pawn here and play with an isolated d-pawn. So c5 and knight c3, I've seen knight c3. If black wants to avoid c5, he can take the pawn, but that helps white develop his pieces. Then white has a nice isolated queen pawn position where he has 3 pieces out. Normally black doesn't do that, and that gives white a chance to play here, which moves the pawn twice in the opening, but it does create the majority. And you can see white's up by about 0.6, which is a nice opening advantage. Okay, so you asked the question about when do you take the pressure off the center, and I came up with an off the top of my head. That we could make that into a video from your recording this time.
Sure, yeah, that's
my good lesson with Ken number 2, featuring when do you take the pressure off the center.
Sounds good.
Yep. All right. I think I answered that question as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Do you want to do like some puzzles?
Yeah, that would be
All
great.
right, let me check. I want to check your page and see what we've done and what we haven't done. We did some of those puzzles a long time ago. All right, so let's see, was it number 140? No, that wasn't it. I wonder if it's 140. I typed it wrong. No, but we'll see what this is anyway. Okay. So here's the question. Is it safe for black to play knight on F to D5?
Knight on F to D5, okay. Well, let's see. I mean, the things you've got to look out for are E4, knight takes D5. G4 is an AWL, but it doesn't look like it. That's like it's just giving up a pawn. If you play E, knight on F to D5, E4, you just play knight takes C3, for example. Oh, you can also just play knight takes F4. So that's hitting the bishop. You've got sequences like knight takes F5, and then you've got either C takes D5 or knight takes D5, followed by perhaps G takes F3, queen takes F3. How about knight to G5? Doesn't look. Is he trapped? Queen trapped. It looks like the only move. No, he's on the long diagonal. He can. Get away to G4, F5, E6. So it looks like the queen's not getting trapped. unless I miscalculated that, which I frequently do. Wonder if you can clear the third rank. Probably not, to get the bishop again with the queen. See knight f to d5, say knight takes d5, then say bishop, say knight takes d5. Looks, oh, wait. Knight takes d5 allows queen takes b7. Then say one of the rooks to rook to b8. Oh, that allows queen takes e7. So I'd have to do say knight on f to d5, knight takes d5. Probably has to play c takes d5. On c takes d5, you've got rook to c7. Looks like that's going to win one of those pawns. All right, so it looks like I'd say knight on f to d5 is oh, wait a minute, got queen takes. Knight on f to d5, knight takes d5, queen takes d5. If queen takes d5, knight takes d5, and oh, queen takes d5, then you've got bishop takes h3.
That's where your safety table comes in, right? Your safety table should tell you that h3 is on the safety table. And why is h3 on the safety table? Well, white can't win the bishop because the queen's guarding it, and black's bishop is attacking the bishop on g2, and black can't win the bishop on g2 because the king's guarding it. So right. G2 and h3 are kind of mutually, neutral on the safety table. But once you disturb it by getting rid of one of the defenders, well, then of course, then g2 and h3 are no longer safe, and queen takes d5 does that, right? Yeah. That removes the defender from h3. Right. So after knight f d5, knight takes d5, queen takes d5, white can just play bishop takes h3, or he can trade queens first. Trade queens first and pick up the bishop. Right. If you're going to be up a piece, you may as well trade queens, right? Exactly. So knight on d5, knight takes d5. But there's nothing wrong with it. So it looks like, it looks like black is maybe is losing a pawn on that move. All right, well, when you're done, say final answer and we'll take a look. Let's take on. Yeah, it gets a little foggy once getting in several moves, but I'll say no, it's not safe. So that'll be my final answer. Final answer. Okay, that always frees me up to talk. Okay, so superficially, knight f d5 looks super safe. It's only attacked twice and it's guarded 3 times. Okay, but as you point out, the queen really isn't guarding it because the queen has to guard the bishop on h3. So let's say white takes it. And you're right, if he takes with the pawn, rook here is a double attack that can't be met, right?
Yeah.
And this should be clearly winning a pawn. All right, so that only leaves knight takes. And now the question is, can white beat that too? Well, suppose he takes the pawn on b7. This looks a little dangerous. What could black play here?
Oh, rook on f to b8, for example.
No, bishop takes b8 looks like a strong answer to that.
Oh, it sure does.
This is a pattern that you see in a lot of tactics books.
Well, because it looks like you've got, you know, you've got bishop takes g2, king takes g2, knight takes f4, check. And if he plays g takes f4, then you've got queen to g4, check. Somewhere, and then queen takes king somewhere, and then queen takes f4.
Well, it's funny you would see that move order because that's a very strange move order, and that's a bad move order for black. Bishop takes, king takes, knight takes check, pawn takes, queen checks. The problem is you're getting a pawn, but you've got loose pawns all over the place.
Yeah.
So let's stockfish. Where should white put the king? Stockfish says king h1, says now black can play rook a b8, queen takes e7, rook f e8, hitting some more pawns, queen g5, queen takes g5, pawn takes g5, rook takes e2, threatening more pawns, and he's going to win another pawn, and white only has a slight advantage now.
So let's
yeah,
see, is there another order?
Well, the other move order is exactly the opposite of what you did, which is a much more dangerous move order. Play knight takes f4 first. And when he plays pawn takes, then play queen to g4, threatening mate. This is the famous move order that you want to do. Because all of a sudden, white doesn't have a lot of defenders on g2.
Yeah, and the pawn, it pins the bishop.
Right, let's see if Stockfish thinks queen g4 is the best move there. Yep, queen g4. And now Stockfish gives knight here only move, right? Every other move gets mated.
That's it.
And Stockfish says the best idea is to trade here and just take this pawn where white's got all isolated pawns on the king's side. And after rook e1, queen d2, he says well, he actually thinks that blacks might be winning here, -1. So.
Well, that means that it was safe.
That's right. That's what exactly. Well, it means queen takes b7 can't be played.
Yeah.
So the question is, what could white do here? Well, suppose white just saves the bishop, and he threatens to take here. He's also threatening in some lines to play e4. And what Stockfish actually says here is that black's in trouble. He gives bishop takes g2, king takes g2, queen f5, and now queen b7. Well, you say, why did he give him the pawn? Well, give me a move that saves the pawn. There's not too many of them, so it should be easy.
All right, well, b6, but then there's c takes c6, rook takes c6.
Right, so that's not a move. You got to find another different move. It's got to be either a rook to b8 or a knight to b6. It's got to be one of those guys.
Oh, you got rook on f to b8, then yeah, rook
Well,
on
you wouldn't put the rook on f to b8. Why would you tie up your a rook on a8? That would be crazy. You would play rook on 8. And only a beginner would play rook on f to b8. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you block your rook in the corner like that? You would always play this rook here, right?
All right. Well, I mean, now the a pawn's hanging.
Yeah, and who's taking it?
Well, no one at the moment.
Well, okay, but if you attack it, that takes a whole tempo with your queen, and then he just plays like a3, a6.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe you can play e4 here and remove the guard on the e pawn, but yeah, you don't play moves like this. This is crazy.
Okay, that's good to know.
Well, I mean, do you ever see grandmasters put their rooks like this unless they're going to push both of them and attack? Like if the king's over here in the corner and they're going to push both those pawns, well, that's different. Then they're putting their rooks where the king is, but they don't put their rooks like this when there's no king over there. That just doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Well, just count the number of rook moves that you have. Right now, how many rook moves does black have?
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right, if you play rook here, how many rook moves do you have?
4.
Right, if you play rook here, how many rook moves do you have?
8. Oh, 7, I guess.
7. Well, compare 7 with 4.
It's bigger.
Yeah, I mean,
than.
you generally, unless there's a tactical reason, you know, you don't give your pieces 4 moves when you can give them 7 moves. You know, it's that easy, really. All right, so suppose he plays rook a b8. Stockfish says you can drive the knight away. The knight goes away and hits your pawn. You counterattack the rook. Rook moves out of the way. You hit his queen. He tries to save the queen. You take the pawn, and he's in big trouble.
Yes,
All right,
somehow we've gotten up into 3, almost 4.
If he plays knight b6, which looks reasonable, Stockfish says to play e4 anyway. And notice the queen's running out of moves on the 5th rank.
Yeah.
So the queen's in a little bit of danger of getting trapped in with like h3 and g4 here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So therefore, black says, let me get the queen out of there. Bishop here, pawn here. Stockfish says, I'll even play h4. And it says white's completely winning here. So this is safe. You're not losing anything except position. So it turns out, if you take with the knight, you're not losing anything, but it's not good. So after knight takes bishop d2, white's way better. So black should never have played this move to begin with. Stockfish says the best move is to just take this bishop so the queen doesn't have to guard it, and move it, let's say here, and attack his queen. Make his queen move somewhere, like queen here hitting this pawn. Now you can play this knight to d5. And Stockfish says white's in nicely better, but it's not as bad as the other one. So the answer to the question is knight fd5 is sort of safe, but it's not a very good move. And it's not a good move because of, oops. It's not a good move because of knight takes bishop d2, followed by e4. And black's got a lot of weaknesses around the board. His queen's tied up guarding the bishop. The knight's going to be hit by the pawn. The pawn on b7 needs guarding. He's just got a lot of problems here.
Yeah.
So this is a gray kind of question, because this is like a real game. Because in a real game, you know, you can make a move that's safe, but it doesn't mean it's very good. So I guess this came up in a student's game, and I decided to save it because it was interesting that superficially it looks safe. If you look deeper, it looks like maybe it's not safe, but actually it sort of is safe. It's just not, just leads to bad things happening.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I saved it. So it makes an interesting puzzle because, you know, this is like a real game puzzle. You know, in a game, you know, it's not like white to play and win. It's more like, you know, what are all the factors here? And it looks like maybe knight d5 might not be safe, but actually it turns out it is safe. It's just not good.
Yeah, that's
and
interesting.
by the way, by Stockfish's definition of safe, it's not safe. because Stockfish says well, black's only down a little less than a pawn here. And if he plays that move, now he's down by over 2 pawns. So he's losing over a pawn in evaluation. So by definition of that, you know, by using like, you know, are you losing a pawn or more? Black is losing about a pawn by making that move, but it's not, he's not losing material. He's losing a pawn in evaluation. All right. So I accidentally picked out that puzzle. Let's try number 40 instead. Let's see what's there. Examine %40. No, that's a combination. I don't think we want to look at that. Let's see here. Oh, I think you've done. Have you done this one? This is a helpmate in 2.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think I do too many helpmates.
All right. This is a problem that Ralston says he gives his students. So a helpmate is where black goes first and helps white checkmate him. So this is black to play and help white checkmate him in 2 moves. So it's black, white, and the second white move is checkmate black king. That makes sense?
Yeah. So black.
Black to play and help white checkmate him in 2 moves.
Huh.
So what's your thinking so far?
Well, it's first of all, I'm thinking promote the pawn or take the knight.
Well, those are black's only legal moves, so I agree that's a good start. So how many different possibilities is that for black?
Oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. It's funny. I ask people that question, and a lot of people say 2 because they think promoting the pawn is one different move.
Right.
But actually, there's 4 different ways you can promote the pawn, and they count as 4 different moves. So even though there's only 2 moves of the pieces, king to h7 and h2 to h1, h2 to h1 is not a move. It's h2 to h1 promote to x, where x has 4 different things. So the right answer is 5. So if I ask how many different moves does black have, the answer is 5. If you say how many different pieces can move, well, obviously the answer is only 2.
Yeah. So if you promote to queen or rook, then that's check. And so white has to spend a turn getting out of check.
That's true.
But
it's got to be one of those 5, or else it's not. Else there's no answer.
Sure.
By the way, one of the hints people give if you've never done helpmates is try to come up with a pattern that's a mate and then see if you can get there. So you kind of work your way backward, if that makes sense.
Well, knight on f6 and queen at g8's mate, but the king on h8.
Right, so there's a pattern. If black can help you get that pattern, then that would be the answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to figure out, is it possible with one of those 5 black moves that you could get to that pattern? Well, clearly after king h7, you're not going to get to that pattern. So,
Right.
so the question would become, is there a piece that black can promote to that would allow knight f6 and queen g8? If so, then you're done.
Yeah, so it looks like it, let's see. 1, 9. Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm not seeing that because promote the bishop and so h1 equals bishop knight to f6. Well, then there's no move other than bishop takes g2.
Right.
So that doesn't work.
All right. What else could you do?
Promote to knight has the problem of if he moves to h3, he blocks queen to h8 mate.
Wait, you don't mean h3, you mean g3? So you're saying,
I'm sorry, g3.
You're saying h1, knight f6, knight g3 blocks the queen.
Yeah, and knight f2 is check.
Right. Do you think that's coincidence?
No, I'm sure that's all very well designed into the problem.
Right, right. If the king was on another square, that would work easily.
That would work fine.
But then the problem would be too easy, right?
Right. So then it seems it's got to be one of the checking. Well, that means I can't play knight
that's not
f6.
necessarily true. You can get a bishop or a knight, and it's a mate other than knight f6, queen g8.
Yeah, there could be another one.
Right. Or it could be one of the checking ones too. Yeah, I mean, all those are possible. I'm just saying it's not impossible to get a bishop or a knight. It's just impossible to get a bishop or a knight and allow knight f6, queen g8.
Yeah.
So we're back to square one a little bit. So what else might work? So if that mating pattern knight f6, queen g8 is off the board, is there any other mating pattern that could exist with these pieces?
Well, I mean, with the knight on f6, you could also have the queen on h7, but that seems like that takes too many moves.
That can't be done in 2 moves. That requires 1 knight move and 2 queen moves, so that's not going to be possible. So the question is, besides knight f6, queen g8, with these 5 pieces on the board, is there any other mating pattern? Because if the answer is no, then there's no answer to the problem because we're already pretty much eliminating knight f6, queen g8.
Yeah, it's just I have to realize that black's helping.
That's right.
He has to make bad quote unquote bad moves.
Well, actually, they're good moves. They're good moves that help white. Because white and black are cooperating here.
All right, so I'm trying to see what other patterns are there.
Right. In order for there to be an answer, there's got to be a pattern.
Well, there would be queen on g6, knight on f7, but that
knight takes 2 moves to get to f7, and the queen takes 1 move to get to g6, so that's 3 moves. So that can never happen. It's got to be a mating pattern that you can get to in 2 moves.
Oh, wait, well. 2 moves, yeah. I mean, I was thinking knight on, g5 and then queen on h7, but that looks like it's too many moves.
It's 3 moves. Also takes queen 2 moves to get to h7, 1 move for the knight to get to g5.
1, 2, 3, 4. was wondering if there's something with a queen discovery, but that like move the knight and that's check. Check. The queen would have to be on h6.
Well, you can get the queen. You can get the queen h6 in 2 moves, but you'd have to do something.
Yeah,
Queen on h6 right now is not check. You'd have to either move the king or something to make it a check.
Yeah, so that's too. It's too many moves for knight on f6, queen on h6.
Right, that you can't do.
Well, let's see. Queen, knight on f8. No, that doesn't work. I was thinking queen on b2 because he's got king to g8 unless he blocks g8 with his own piece. I think that's too many moves.
It would take the pawn on h2 3 moves to get the g8.
Yeah.
And besides, what piece would that have? I guess it could be a bishop.
Bishop. Yeah.
Right. So you could get a bishop. The queen could move to. Well, then the queen would have to move right away to let the bishop go, and if the queen moves right away, then it's checking the king, and it's too early. So that looks like you're just taking 3 or 4 moves to get to that pattern.
I wonder if it has to involve the promotion piece interfering with taking a square away from the king, or we just don't have time for that.
Well, if you do have time for that, what kind of piece would it have to be?
It would.
Like if you got a knight, would the knight have time to get back and interfere in 2 moves? So what kind of piece would it have to be?
Oh, a fast piece. You know, bishop or rook or queen.
Well, could a bishop get back in 2 moves?
No, it doesn't look like it.
If you promote to a bishop, the second bishop move would not be anywhere near the king. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So I don't think bishop or knight would work. It would have to be a queen or a rook.
Oh no. Okay, I'm starting to get a different idea. So, like, h1 equals queen, check, queen to f1, queen takes h7, then queen to f8. But then he can block with queen to. Oh, I have to be a rook. Then it would work. h1 equals rook, queen to f1, rook takes h7, and then queen to f8 mate.
Guess that's the answer then, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be the rook, can't be the queen.
Yeah.
So that's the one and only answer, since that knight f6 stuff doesn't work. h1 rook. Black is helping white. White says, "Can you help me, Mr. Black? Don't take my queen, take the knight." Black says, "Of course, I'm on your team this time." Rook takes h7. White says, "Thank you very much." Mate in 2.
Yeah.
So that's the answer.
So that's the piece that's interfering. By capturing the knight.
Yeah. So Rausen likes this problem because he says it helps the students kind of think outside the box.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
All right, so maybe today would be a good video if we can do the same thing we did with the last one. I think I downloaded it and somehow got it to upload in the right format. Well, we could try it and see if it works.
You can. It's an hour, a little over an hour long. So.
Yeah. Well, the thing I liked about it is you asked a clear question. You know, when should you take the pressure off the center? And we looked at some pros and cons of the different positions where you do that. And I think that would make a good start of the video, and the last half was fine too.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Are you all right for next week?
Yes, I believe next week is fine.
Okay, let me put you in.
So today is 7/11, 7/11, ready for a Slurpee.
7/11. Okay. So, all right. Sounds good. I will see you next week then.
All right, see you, Dan. Thank you.
Good luck in your games. Bye.
Thanks. Okay, bye.